Hello, in this video I'm going to go over the IELTS speaking test, the procedure, how it is scored, and what you can expect in the three parts when you do the test. First, let's look at the procedure of how and when an IELTS speaking test is done. An IELTS speaking test is between 11 and 14 minutes long. When you do it depends on whether you do the paper-based or the computer-based. The paper-based is after the writing, reading, and listening, and it's usually in the afternoon. But there are rare occasions when there may be too many candidates and you might have to come back the next day, but that is quite rare. For the computer-based, it will be in the morning or afternoon, and this is depending on when you do the other three parts. So if you do the three parts in the morning, well, then you will do the speaking in the afternoon, and vice versa. If you do your speaking in the morning, then you would be doing your other three parts in the afternoon. You must never be late. If you are even 1 minute late, you cannot do the test. The people at the IELTS exam will ask you to be 30 minutes early, so plan to be early, because if you miss even by 1 minute, they will not allow you to do the test, no matter what your reason is. When you're waiting in the waiting room, you'll be called and asked to sit outside the interview room. You might have to sit there for 1 minute, or the examiner might just ask you to come in right away. When you do the test, you are alone with an examiner who will ask you questions, and again, the interview will last 11 to 14 minutes. Now, when it comes to scoring, you'll be scored on 4 categories. Category 1 is fluency and coherence. This is how well you connect your ideas and how quickly you speak. Next will be lexical range and accuracy. Another word for this is vocabulary, and how big of words you use and how accurately you use them. Next will be the grammatical range and accuracy. Same thing here. You have to use more difficult grammatical range to get a higher score, and you need to be accurate. And finally, pronunciation. This is how easily you can be understood and how well you speak sentences. Okay, now let's go into more detail of what you can expect in each part. Now let's start with part 1, and let me say right here that this part is not really important for your overall score. This is more about getting you comfortable, asking you topics that you're familiar with, but let's have a look what you can expect in part 1. Part 1 will be 4 to 5 minutes. It will begin with an easier question about where you live or about your work or study. There will be 3 questions. So if it's about live, there'll be 3 questions about live. If it's about work or study, same. There'll be 3 questions about that topic. There will be 2 more general questions and then 4 questions each. So a total of 8 questions overall. And these questions are just about everyday things that anyone would know about, like shopping or going outside, things like that. Now let's move on to talk about part 2, which is 2 to 3 minutes long. This is when I like to say the exam really begins, because this is where you can really show your linguistic speaking ability, and this is where the examiner is listening very carefully. So many people feel this is when the test really begins. The examiner will read the introduction and then the question, and the examiner will give you the booklet with the question on it and a paper and pencil for making notes. So you can first hear the question, and then second, you can see it on the exam booklet. And again, you will have paper and pencil for making notes for 1 minute. And even after you're finished making notes, don't give the booklet back. You can see the booklet for the whole duration of your part 2 speaking. And there are bullet points on there that you should follow to help you develop a full answer to that question. After 1 minute, the examiner will ask you to speak for 2 minutes. If you stop before the 2 minutes has elapsed, then the examiner will ask you if you can say any more about this. After you are finished speaking, the examiner will ask you one more simple question related to the topic, and then the examiner will take the booklet, paper, and pencil back. Part 3 is 4 to 5 minutes and is also very important to your overall score. The examiner will ask you questions related to what you just talked about in Part 2. And let me go into more detail about this now. So in Part 3, these questions will be on the same theme as Part 2. These questions are about society. They are not personal questions. So be ready to have answers to talk about society as a whole or larger groups of people. And you will have 3 to 6 questions depending on time and how much you say or how many follow-up questions the examiner asks. So, if you speak a lot about a few topics, it's fine. Just expect 3 to 6 questions. The examiner will ask follow-up questions depending on what you say. So it's hard to predict exactly what to expect in Part 3 because it'll start with a general topic and then the examiner will move into something a little bit more specific depending on what you say. Also worth noting is that the examiner chooses more difficult questions if they feel you are a 6.5 or higher. So overall, there are 9 questions, and there's kind of an easy, medium, and higher level. So if you feel like the questions are quite technical or difficult, that just means that the examiner thinks you're doing a good job and wants to make sure that you really are a 6.5 or higher for speaking. Okay, so that's a basic overview of what you can expect on an IELTS speaking test, and I wish you the best of luck on your next IELTS test.